Welcome to the Artful Teaching Podcast. I'm Callie Flox, and I'm here with co-host Heather Francis, and we have two guests with us this morning. Emily Soderborg, who is our project manager of the Native American Curriculum Initiative, and our coordinator of the Native American Curriculum Initiative, Brenda Beyal. Brenda, we've been answering questions from our teachers, and we have a list of questions here that we've been trying to get to. And so I'm going to just jump right in with those questions, okay? So the question that's up right now from our listeners is, they want to know, how do I meet, connect with, and make friends with Native Americans in my community?
I think I would start out by saying you have already met Native American people, and you probably have friends that are Native American. And so the assumption that there are different communities that we have to walk into to meet people and make friends is probably something that we need to do away with. That there are Native Americans all over the United States. We're still here, and we are contributing members of the community. And so if you wanted to make friends or get to know a little bit more about culture, there are many opportunities that you can look for. One is see if there are any community outreach programs. Like in our community, there is the Utah Department of Culture and Community Engagement, and you could go to their website and you will find a lot of information on different events that may be happening. There are always series or, lectures that are going on, or there are museums that you can visit that are maybe hosting an art show done by Native Americans. You can also reach out to, in your school community, to the Title VI program. I know that in our community right now, it's winter, and there are storytelling events that are going on up and down the Wasatch Front that you can find out about. And so it is quite easy to find events that you can go to. But I want to ask Emily, how would you approach, Emily, as a non-Native, going into an event or, just becoming a part of maybe a celebration?
For me, I think the biggest thing is just observing first, having a really open mind. So I will just go and take my family places. I don't know anyone oftentimes, but I'll just sit and I'll observe and I'll watch and see how other people are interacting. I think it's also been just being open to trying new things. In response to what you were saying earlier, a lot of times it's just people that I follow on social media. I get information, and just knowing a little bit about what's going on, just a little bit, helps me to have conversations so that it feels more comfortable. Oftentimes, if you have absolutely no idea, no background, then you don't know how to start a conversation with someone. But just having a little bit of information and approaching the idea that there are no wrong questions, that we can ask questions if we are doing it honestly and openly and sincerely. If we're really wanting to find out, then the people that we're interacting with, whatever differences they may have, whatever culture they may be from, if we are honestly trying to find out because we want to know, they will recognize that and they will respond. I know I've asked questions in the wrong way in the past, and I've learned from that. But the people that I was talking to, they said, oh, that's probably not the best way to ask that question. Here's a different way to ask it. Like asking the question, where do you come from, isn't the best question. More, tell me about your background. Tell me where your accent comes from or where your language is from. So I've learned just from asking questions, from really wanting to know, and from just doing a little bit of research so I know what types of questions are appropriate or what things I should ask. Also, just finding the students in your classroom that are Native and connecting with their parents and asking the parents questions has been really helpful for me too.
Emily, I think talking about the students in schools, Arts Express 2022, we had many Native American artists who were there presenting, and each of them would share their stories as they presented. And I was struck by how many of them grew up with their friends at school and their teachers thinking they were Hispanic rather than Native American.
Yes.
And that misunderstanding, they never even had a chance to share what their heritage is and where their relatives came from and what they connect with or associate with. And then to hear that over and over again, they thought I was Hispanic. They didn't understand what my braids meant. They didn't, how simple it is to ask questions. So when we're in the normal world, at school and the general world, you offered great ideas, Emily, of how to ask authentically and genuinely and listen. And we want to get to know every student in our class. So we should be asking these questions of everybody. What do you relate to? How do your grandparents feel about this? Where does your language come from? I love how you ask those questions. And then when I went to a couple of different powwows, and the Native people there are in full regalia and with their people, and that culture is different. And I was the outsider. And that was a different way of getting to know them. So it's one thing when we're in the majority, but then there's another thing when we're in the minority.
And I think for me, I've had that opportunity often to be in the minority. And so you recognize how uncomfortable you might feel and how, since Native Americans are in the minority most of the time, how they have to approach things differently. And it helps you when you put yourself in situations when you are in the minority, it helps you to recognize how they feel most of the time, and it helps you know how you would want to be reached out to, how you would want to be responded to. So having those experiences helps you be more able to be the one open and welcoming when you are in the majority.
I think for me as an Indigenous person, if I see someone at an event or if I invite someone to participate, I welcome questions. And I always hope that they do not come into an environment thinking us and them, that it is us as humans that are having shared experiences, and that we have more commonalities than we have differences. And going into a situation and looking for commonalities helps in any situation, whether it's, talking with somebody that is from a different race or who comes from a different life experience or comes from maybe a different point of view, religion, that we look for the commonalities. And I think when we find those, we see that we are more alike than we are different, and that we can learn from one another and see that together we make a community. And I think that puts everyone at ease.
So Brenda, typically when we start a podcast, you start by introducing yourself in your native tongue.
Right.
And because we jumped right over that today, could we stop and acknowledge one of the beautiful ways we're different is that your ownership of your culture through your language, and will you introduce yourself now? And then I want to share another story about how we're connected, like you just said, how we're the same.
Okay. So, Yat she Brenda Beyal and Shia. Ashihin Slankia Ani Bashichin, Twochane Edashiche, Twochedlini Edashanala, Ewat Sanshle. I just shared with you that my name is Brenda Beyal and that I am born into the Salt clan, and I'm born for the Taurine House people. And then I shared with you my maternal and my paternal clans. And then at the very end, I said, and this is the kind of woman I am. And that's how I ended it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And each time I hear you introduce yourself, I reflect for me, what are my maternal lineage, what is my paternal lineage, and what kind of woman do I want to be? And I learned so much. We find our common ground as I let you express your individual voice. And then the day you taught me how to make fry bread out in the driveway, getting ready for one of our gatherings, and I realized we are both cooks for a family. we have both done family reunions and large gatherings before for our different clans. And we did that together that day based on your recipes and your heritage, but it aligned perfectly with the times that I've spent learning cinnamon rolls from one of my great mentors and cooking with my grandmother. And those things perfectly aligned. One of my most powerful memories when I was at the powwow, one of the powwows, this was a powwow where I've been to a couple of them, and but I was brought to tears watching 3 different fathers. I sat quietly and just observed because I love the dancing and the regalia and the interactions of the families. I love watching the families work. But I watched 3 fathers standing in different places help their sons don their regalia for their dance. One was a toddler, one was maybe 5 or 6, and one was maybe 8 or 10. And the caring of these fathers as they went through the ritual of putting on their regalia and getting ready to dance, and then watching these little boys follow their fathers out into the hallway and go down and line up to get ready to enter for their dance. I went, oh my goodness, families are universal. Families are the same. They had their rituals. My relatives have our rituals of baseball games or river rafting, whatever our rituals are. But the emotional connection was just the same. And I just saw the power in parenting of the time these fathers were spending with their children.
Callie, that just warms my heart because it brings me back to just the commonalities, seeing how we're alike rather than looking for differences. And I'm not saying that we don't acknowledge the vibrant diversity of people in general, but underneath that all, we all have love for family, love for ancestors, and love for one another.
This topic made me think about recent Native American friends that I've made. A woman in my neighborhood that I've been working with on a couple community projects. I knew that she traveled back to Arizona and that she had Native American heritage. But when I bring it up and like try to ask more questions to understand, it's not really what she wants to talk about. Like, she has her children at her home right now. She's, living in the city. And I feel like if I focus my conversation on, well, tell me more about your Native American pieces, portions, like that's almost othering rather than just, we're working on these projects and this is what our relationship is about. And I don't, like, you are Native American, you have heritage, I honor that, but I do so by allowing you to have many contemporary labels that you choose for yourself. And that was what I was reflecting on with this question.
I love that. I just want to go back to where you have already met Native Americans because we are a very vibrant part of the community already, and loving that friendship trumps any kind of need to separate or even, because you're Native, let me talk to you about Native things. It's the friendship of people and human beings. And obviously, all of us sitting here, we don't talk Native 24/7 just because Brenda Beyal is in that room.
Right.
We talk about all kinds of things.
So could it be said that making friends with Native American people is like making friends with anybody?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And along that same line, anyone we're making friends with, it's important that we become aware of their sensitivities, because I'm going to make friends more quickly with a Native American person when I do ask the right questions. Like, I can't think of it right now, Brenda, but you've said you don't ask what tribe are you from. What is the important wording?
Sometimes people will say, oh, so are you Indian? And that's probably not the best way to begin a conversation. If you have introduced yourself and said hello and you find this person intriguing and you think, hey, we might be friends, then maybe another question down the line would be, what tribal nation are you from? Or maybe what tribal nation do you hail from, something like that, so that you are being more specific rather than generalizing, Native American people.
What's the question Native people ask each other so they don't date in the same clan?
Oh, that's for differing tribes. For the Native people, for Navajo people, we sometimes, when you begin dating, you want to make sure that you're not dating someone that is born into the same tribe you are, because clans are actually a form of building relationships and showing that we are all related. And so my parents would always be very, I don't want to say forceful, well, they would encourage us to find out what clan the person was that we were dating, because they never wanted us to date someone who was a member of our clan. So we would say, what's your clan? So
I wanted to state, oftentimes I ask their permission, like more along the lines of, would you be willing to share what your heritage is, what your affiliations are with tribal nations? Because they might not want to talk about it. So I've learned more, just, would it be okay if I find out what your tribal affiliations are? So rather than just saying what is your tribe, or what nation are you from?
Yeah, would you like to share your tribal affiliations? Is
right.
Thanks so much for all these ideas. It is such a pleasure to do this work with you guys. When we get out in schools, we get with other adults and sharing these things. I think I have learned so much from the two of you, and I really appreciate the things that the ways you've blessed my life and benefited my ability to be sensitive and aware of the diverse people around me.
I think that in some ways we broker friendships with schools and teachers and Native communities. So if you are interested, we can help you connect with your Title VI coordinator or connect you with the Native Artist teaching roster. Bringing a Native artist to your classroom is a great way to make a new friend. And so I just wanted to offer those ideas as well.
And some of the children in your classroom who are Native, who have never had the courage to speak up and say they're Native, the day that Native artist shows up might be the day that they have the courage to really talk about their heritage.
And I do have to say that there are many parents who would happily come into your classroom and teach about their culture and their heritage.
Great. So thank you for joining us for this episode of the Artful Teaching podcast. Artful Teaching is made possible by the BYU Arts Partnership and the McKay School of Education.
Thanks to James Houston for editing this podcast. Music was generously provided by Connor Chi, a Navajo Diné composer and performer.
And special thanks to all of the teachers who are changing lives every day while serving in schools.
If you like what you heard, please leave us a review. You can find all the show notes for this episode and more resources at advancingartsleadership.com.
And don't forget to check out our tribe-approved lesson plans on the website as well.
I'm Heather Francis.
And I'm Callie Flox.
And I'm Brenda Beyal.
Wishing you an artful journey.